Okay, well, we are live now on YouTube, yes. And I'm here with Johannes Agenbach, and he is a farmer from South Africa. And I'm going to ask Johannes, I suppose, by saying, first of all, how did you go from being a farmer to being a political person?
Good evening, John and audience. Thank you for the opportunity to be able to speak with you and your audience. So, my name is Johannes Agenbach. I grew up in a small town on the west coast of South Africa. I think it would be more fitting to explain a little bit about myself then, so that it makes sense how I ended up in politics. We were homeschooled because my parents both were right-wingers. My father at that time, or at the time of meeting my mother, was in the Conservative Party, which was a controlled opposition party to stop and stymie the growth of the Herstigte Nasionale Partij. But seeing that, sorry, I just need to close something down. It's making a lot of racket over here on my end. So both of them were very politically active. But when he met my mother, he joined up with the RNP. And eventually, you know, they left all the NG Kerk. So the NG Kerk political used to also because always there's it had so support out grievous the Afrikaner people in their pursuit of freedom. When apartheid people left the church, they left the public schools. They didn't want us to suffer any communist indoctrination, and we were homeschooled. I was actually homeschooled by a Scottish tutor, because we were homeschooled in English, which is why I have a bit, not a lot, but a bit of a better command than some of my countrymen of the English language. And yeah, so growing up, we were always, you know, taught our history, the importance of nationalism, the hope that we would again be free one day. And when I left school, I went immediately into farming. I always wanted to pursue a political career, but my parents, my dad would make me swear that I'd never get involved in politics because it's futile in his mind. You know, South Africa is lost. We will never ever have our country back again. Apartheid will never be, you know, policy again, etc. And in 2015, I went to study at the University of Potchefstroom. I, of course, didn't study political sciences and languages like I wanted to, but rather my parents wanted me to study international trade. But while being there, I obviously started my political activism, you know, because coming from a very small town into somewhat big town with a university, meeting all these new people, it develops you as a person. And I had big fights with the people that taught, the head of the Afrikaans faculty in the university, where he actually chased me out of his office. And a member of parliament till this day. He's the head of the Freedom Front Plus, and he wanted me to spend a day in parliament with him because he thought that I had the potential to serve in political office. And then in 2016, I eventually did visit him. I met him, Corneille Mulder, and Peter Mulder, and they showed me around. And it was after that, after seeing how the system works on the inside, that I decided conventional politics, that I do not see myself changing establishment, but rather that it would change me on the inside, and it would detract from the goals that I have set for myself politically, which is the freedom of my people. I believe that any man that pursues anything other than the freedom of his people is on, it doesn't matter how much progress he makes, because he's on the wrong path. So yeah, that is how I got involved in politics, and and after
That's
that,
fantastic, Johannes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is your father proud of the way that you have become political, or was he hesitant, or was he reluctant, or disappointed even?
Well, let me put it to you this way. So my dad said that if I ever did go into politics, he would disown me, right? And so we started the Vryburger Movement in 2021 because we saw a desire. We saw no legitimate vehicles that expressed our worldview and that pursued our goals. All of the movements that are there, the majority of them are reactionaries that work with AfriForum, not in an official capacity, but we believe, at least in a directional capacity. So we wanted something that pursues white identity, safeguards it, and the freedom of our people, not to share this country with everybody else, but to free our people, to have a country of our own. And then in 2021, we did our first public exhibition, if you will, where we went to a high school with the name Hoërskool Rustenburg. And the reason we went there is because a bunch of kids sang the song Erika, because there's a little small town within Rustenburg which is German. It's completely German. The people speak German there. There's a German church. I've went to the German church in South Africa. When Bank Erika, and they did the Roman salute. And the Jewish Board of Deputies went to them, much like we can see with Bryce Mitchell. They had a whole humiliation ritual where they forced them to go to the Holocaust Memorial, of which there are two in South Africa, by the way. If you think that's outrageous, yeah, you might ask yourself, why would there be two of these institutions in South Africa? If this is neither Germany nor Israel, what is the cultural significance to Afrikaners? Why must we care? Why must we care? Anyway, so the Jewish Board of Deputies forced these children to go on an educational tour to these, Holocaust memorials. And we thought it to be completely unacceptable and outrageous, and saw an opportunity to introduce ourselves as a movement to the general public. So I called my dad the day that we do it. I said to him, listen, I'm going to be in the newspapers. I just want to say that I wouldn't mind if you disown me now, because I have never felt this alive in my entire life. I found my calling, and I will never stop. And my dad was... he said, oh, what the hell did you do? And my mom said that the whole night he didn't sleep. He couldn't sleep. And he went up as early as he could, drove to the store and bought himself a newspaper. And the absolute lies that they wrote in the newspaper, the smear campaign by the media was insane. Lying about how we fled, how we were cowards, how we committed a crime physically. It's insane. We can go over all that stuff if you want to, but it's not, I don't know if it's too important. But in any way, so my dad, which is an avid reader of the newspaper and a believer of everything that is propagated usually by the newspaper, says, what utter nonsense. These people do not know. John, I would just like to tell you that we aren't live anymore. It seems that your stream has ended.
Okay, well, we're still talking, and what I
Okay.
did was unfortunately a new thing here where I hope it's still going through. And I
Hmm.
see that there's still some people commenting. I'm doing it via StreamYard via OBS, and I am
Okay, okay,
experiencing,
okay.
yeah, on my side, I am experiencing some choppy internet, but I'm looking at another screen. That's why I got up sometimes. I'm looking at another screen. It still seems like it's going through okay. So I think you are going through. What I had to
Mm-hmm.
abandon was the high definition recording of the audio and video. I think that's what took my. You're working on Elon Musk type of internet, which is working great. Mine isn't, and so I had to abandon that. But I still think it's coming through, and I see some comments there. So I'll take it that we'll keep going, but it's
Okay,
a
awesome.
useful yeah, and I'm so sorry about this lack of professionalism. I doubt you'd get this on InfoWars. By the way, just to let everybody know, in case you didn't know, that Johannes has already been on Owen Schroyer, and he'll probably be back on InfoWars. Do you think you'll be talking to Alex Jones and other people like that pretty soon as well, by the way, Johannes, as an aside?
Well, I do know that I will be. I'm appearing on Elijah Schaefer. Stu Peters has indicated that he's also keen for an interview. I am going on Tim Murdoch from White Rabbit Radio tomorrow. So there are some pretty big platforms that have reached out. I can only imagine that the more they hear, a different side to what is being discussed in South Africa, they'd be interested to discuss it. Alex Jones did indicate that he thought that I had some very important things to say, and that he wishes to have me back on. I'm sure that at some point they will reach out.
Well, that is fantastic. And look, all the more reason then why I am so delighted to speak to you, and why you've decided that you'll give me your time, which is why I'm so upset that I don't have the professional outfit here that I'd wish that I could have, just basically that it works properly. But in any case, we'll get on with what we can talking here while we have the opportunity. I think it's fantastic. It's such a brilliant story to know that not just a story, but like a part of a hero's journey, that a son will say to his father, "Father, you might be disappointed, but I have to do this. It's my calling." And then your father understands this is the right thing to do. It's just brilliant. And what I want to say to you is, like, I've felt for a long time that when I first went to South Africa, roughly 10 years ago, as I've mentioned to you before, I was also lied to. We all were lied to by the people who own the media, whether it's news on papers or in the TV or the radio. And well, I remember, and I'll tell you this, it's an admission. I remember being a school child in the 1980s and listening to the radio, and they were telling us how these evil white racists, they were like Nazis basically in South Africa, were for no reason at all making life difficult. They were enslaving black people just like in America in the 19th century. And of course, I thought as a child I lived in the modern world, and that, oh, now we're in the 20th century, that we are much more enlightened and we don't do evil things like that. And it must be that people in South Africa are doing these terrible things because they're so backwards. So I was being lied to, and we were being told that in protest, the people in our supermarkets were not going to handle produce like oranges from South Africa, and that will show those evil South Africans. But I didn't realize, and I only began to unravel all these lies when I went to South Africa and saw that, oh, an Afrikaner is a white person. He's not an African. I was that ignorant. I thought an Afrikaner was somebody in Africa, like a black guy, right? But he's actually a white guy. He's probably of Dutch origin, but maybe from Germany or France or somewhere around the Low Countries, if not exactly Netherlands. And that's where your people come from. But you've been on the land there 100 years. Could you explain? Sorry, not 100 years, hundreds of years. Your forefathers have. Can you explain to me what's an Afrikaner? What's a Boer? And is there any difference between an Afrikaner and a Boer as to what the words mean or how people perceive an Afrikaner and a Boer?
Okay, so 100%. Those are some great questions. And listen, right now in South Africa, there's a big push to bring about a divide in the definitions between an Afrikaner and a Boer. But I will give a brief, summary of our history, if you will. So I'm going to read from a document, right, that will be published on our website, written by Dr. Mike Tutui. He is a historian in South Africa. He's got a doctorate in history, so he's an authoritative figure on the matter. White South Africa is the property of white people by Dr. Michael Tui. Throughout history, the white people of South Africa have had different names. For example, initially, they were referred to as Dutch. In the 16th and 18th century, they were referred to as burgers, Vryburgers, patriote, etc. Now, it's interesting, when people call out Driekus du Plessis, you'll see, even to this day, they refer to him as a Dutchman, you know. In the 19th century, they were referred to as Voortrekkers and Boers. In the 20th century, they were referred to as Afrikaners. Currently, there is a strong movement to refer to them as Boers again. In this document, some of the different terms are used, but they are always referring to one and the same folk community or folk community in the making. The arrival and actions of the English and are indicated very briefly, as they also contributed to the white control over white South Africa. So that's what I'm going to read from the document, as I don't want to make it too impersonal by just, reading.
Good man. I like the introduction. Yeah, go ahead.
From a document. But basically, the Dutch came here in 1652, and a colony. The first thing that they did was build a castle as a halfway station for the Dutch East Indian Company. Now, after a while, immediately they did start farming, and after a while they set some of the people that were working for the Dutch East Indian Company free. They set them free and said, you can be your people, you can be your own man, go, you have your freedom. All we want you to do is trade with us. You need to farm and produce this and so forth, which is why they started trading with the Dutch East Indian Company, and when they were set free, they referred to themselves as the Vryburgers, which means freed citizens. So, which is where our movement's name comes from. It is a callback to that spirit, wanting to be free, wanting to work the land ourselves, wanting to be a people unto ourselves. Now, those people started working and forming their own identity and culture, and they later started referring to themselves as Afrikaners, and still Vryburgers. But when they moved north in 1834, after, they had serious disagreements with the authorities that were in power in the Cape Colony at that time, they referred to themselves as Voortrekkers. They went to the interior of South Africa as the Voortrekker Boere, and they had a major clash with the Zulus in Natal in 1838, made a vow with God that if he would help them prevail in a battle that was against all odds impossible to win, then they would, they would build a house in terms of a people. They would become a people for him. That is why, to this day, Afrikaners believe in something that we call bevrydingstheology. We believe we were chosen by God to be here. That is the underlining. Even though we are a Protestant people, because you had to be Protestant to migrate to South Africa, we still hold this belief very, very true to this day, that God chose us to be here and to be a people unto ourselves. So this was solidified then on the day of Blood River, this godly ordination, if you will. But in terms of political, acknowledgement, internationally we were acknowledged in 1850 or 52 at the Sand Rivier Convention or Sand River Convention, and it was the Boer republics were internationally recognized to be a people unto themselves. And then in 1910, the Union of South Africa started, where they forced together all the people that had been separated by borders, because we did fight wars, we did buy territory, which made certain areas entirely white in South Africa. Entirely white, like England, Europe, you get the idea. As white as Sweden or as Greenland, or not Greenland, Iceland, sorry. That was how white the interior of South Africa was when we controlled that area. But after 1910, when we lost the Second Anglo-Boer War to the English, those borders were abolished. 100,000 blacks were brought in by Lord Alfred Milner as a ploy to continue the war, the Anglo-Boer War, because they wanted to ethnically cleanse our people. They wanted to make sure that there were none of us left. And I use the word ethnically cleansed for YouTube, but they wanted to make sure that there were none of us left in the interior or in South Africa entirely. Sorry. And they also brought in 30,000 Chinese at that point to work in the mining sector. Now that's where apartheid was started. My people politically organized under the leadership of General Herzog, EBM Herzog, and D.F. Malan to find a political solution. And in 1948, they eventually won, which is when apartheid went into full swing. And the people, it was a peaceful, if I could summarize apartheid, I would say it was a peaceful process in repatriating all the peoples that had been forced to live together. And in 1961, we became a republic, and the entire world recognized the apartheid state as a legitimate state. But then in 1994, under the treachery of the Nationalist Party that had left its roots and its values, the climax of the dismantling of apartheid was reached, and they gave over our country to the ANC black terrorist government. The very same people that they would just fought a bloody war with, in which we won. The blood was mostly theirs, but you understand,
sure.
We won.
It's funny. It's like there was an international organization adjudicating, like an unfair referee in a sports game or a boxing match. Can I just say to you as well, Johannes, that as far as all the history there, I have often thought, when I started learning this thing or hearing about the journey through the interior, it reminded me that it's a parallel completely for the American Manifest Destiny and the pioneers going west, but the Voortrekkers were going east or northeast. Can you just say what does Voortrekker mean? It's a Dutch word, but what does it mean in English?
It means to be a pioneer, I would say.
It's amazing, isn't it? Like
that's the best word that I can find for it. Yeah.
Fur is going before others, and a trek is a journey. So they're like pathfinders or pioneers, those who go before us. So these are your ancestors who went before you, making a covenant with God. It really is so parallel to the forming of America, I think,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, there are very, very many parallels that can be drawn between the Americans and the Boers in South Africa. Much the same kind of people,
Yeah, and what you mentioned about like these people who made a deal with God, look, I hate to say it, right? I'm not going to dwell too much on this, but it's a little bit like supposedly Moses leading his people into a promised land. That kind of an idea,
Oh, absolutely. We do see this as our promised land. Actually, there are prophecies that started becoming prevalent in the Anglo-Boer War, after the Anglo-Boer War, that one day South Africa will become a very, very big white country, the most wealthy white country in the world, and it will be exclusively white. So it will also be bigger than what it is now, according to the prophecy. So this is also something that a huge contingent of Boers believe very firmly. And just to say, just a lot of people say, prophecies are nonsense and this. Well, you may hold those positions, but it's well worth noticing that the guy that translated the Bible in Afrikaans, Tuesius.
Well, you better tell us about Siener van Rensburg then.
Oh yeah, I will. But I'll just mention that the guy that translated the Bible in Afrikaans, his father actually cautioned very heavily against a war with the English, because he said that and this was in 18 in the 1800s already. He said that don't fight this war with the English, because not long from now there will be a huge war in Europe. And so it turned out to be that way. Sad that we couldn't avoid that war.
And by the way, you
so Sina van Rens,
yeah, Sina van Rensburg, all of your religious sort of ethos would be coming from a sort of a Dutch, whether it be Lutheran or Calvinist, maybe type of Protestant religion. Would that be where it is?
Yeah, it's Protestant, Lutheran Protestant, and also there are some offshoots of Calvinism. I grew up in a very Calvinist church myself, but I would want to, just quickly mention that a lot of people say, well, this is Africa, and it's a black continent, and Africans don't even acknowledge the term Africa for themselves. They think that it is a term that is forced upon them, because it isn't even an African word. It has got its roots in Latin. We think of a general like Scipio Africanus, Cornelius Scipio Africanus, the great German general. I know he was named after Africa, but he wouldn't have been. The Romans wouldn't have been giving their generals an African name. If you think about it, they wouldn't have been calling him Julius Umfem Bumwa Kaiser.
Yeah.
So, but in terms of that, so a lot of people say, but how can you say it's a white country? Because you came to this continent. Well, when we came here, there were, roughly speaking, about 100,000 non-white nomads living in the Cape Peninsula. But due to 3 incidents of smallpox, they were all, devastated. Their population is gone. Those that remained integrated with the Cape Malay population, which were slaves that were brought from Batavia, which was an old Dutch colony in Malaysia. And they integrated with them, and then they sort of became the old little culture. To this day, there's a huge or a very big contingent of them in the Cape. They're a Riley bunch and a nuisance, a very big nuisance, but they are here nonetheless.
And that's who we call coloured people, isn't it? It's not. It doesn't mean black. It means they're sort of brownish. They've got a mix of, as you say, Malaysian. They're different than black people.
Yes. I would say that racially they could probably more akin to, if you have to equate them with somebody in the world, it would probably be the Jewish people, where they are more so racially mixed. They don't really have a very strong racial basis to form their culture from, which is also why they don't really have a very strong claim to South Africa. And then the blacks came here roughly the same time that the Boers went inwards into South Africa. We came here before them in South Africa, but they only in the 1700s started coming down from Central Africa into Central West Africa into South Africa, and they embarked on a great journey of, let's say again, ethnic cleansing for YouTube's purposes, but many blacks that lived here no longer they on and they differ on, depending on if you're going to use Zulu or Sotho. But so the Boers obviously did encounter offshoots of those like the Matabele, which today live in Zimbabwe. But the gist of it is that we settled a largely uninhabited area. The areas that were inhabited, we bought the land from them. And we did fight a few wars, which we won absolutely.
Well, I tell you what, you'd better tell us then, right?
That's the
Battle of Blood River, right? I suppose you better tell us. So it's about blood and soil, right? It's not as if, first of all, you've already told us that, hey, it's not as if you went there and conquered these poor people who were already there, these indigenous people. They weren't there for starters. And secondly, there was a battle called the Battle of Blood River. So that blood and soil is what ties you to the land. Can you tell us about the betrayal of the brother of Shaka Zulu against the Voortrekkers, and then the Battle of Blood River that followed. Can you tell us about that?
Well, actually, yeah, Dingaan is the guy that killed Pieter Retief, but it's also worth knowing that, till this day, the blacks will tell you that Shaka Zulu is this great warrior, and he was a very prominent warrior. But it's interesting to know how he came to power. So Dingaan, his brother, was a fat slob. He actually assassinated his own brother Shaka Zulu and then assumed power over the Zulus. So it was pretty much in line with, his character to do what he did with Pieter Retief. Now, I often say that Shaka Zulu is a personal hero of mine, because just speaking in terms of life aspirations, maybe. But I mean now that he was a great warrior, Anyway,
well, it just shows how that. It shows how at least people can acknowledge certain things about the enemy anyway. But what I was wondering is, because I didn't hear you actually explain it in any recent space, was this story about how as the Voortrekkers, like the pioneers, ventured into the interior, they did meet with some of these hostile Bantu people or Zulus. And they made deals with these people. They said, look, we don't want to have battles with you all the time. We'd like to find a way to live together. And the Zulu chief said, well, some other tribe of black people stole my cattle, or they around the place here. If you can recover them, then maybe we can work out a deal here. We could be friends. Can you tell us about this story and then how it turned into a betrayal?
There was many such stories, but we'll go back to your original question. Yes, I know I what do you call it?
Oh, you're fine.
I
diverted
a little from the topic.
Yeah.
Deviated. Yes, deviated. There you go. I deviated a little from the topic, just to jest a little. But in any way, so what you're referring to is Pieter Retief, the specific incident of Pieter Retief. Now, a lot of people till this day they've grown to dislike Pieter Retief because he did this thing. He was betrayed. But it is as a friend of mine and a prominent member in the movement so often says, if we just knew history a little bit better, then we would know we shouldn't hold all of this ill will towards Pieter Retief. He was a great man. He demanded a lot of respect among the Voortrekkers. They saw him to be, a great man. In any way, the fault for the death of Pieter Retief could be squarely put on the backs of the English or the British and the Zulus, because it was the British conspired to have him killed by Dingaan, actually. So that's how that happened. And also they were armed by the missionaries that lived near the Zulus in Natal at that time. But how it exactly happened is Pieter Retief and the Boers, they wanted to bargain for land and buy land. So then Dingaan said to him, listen, if this, I don't know if it was the Swazis or whatever tribe stole some cattle from Dingaan, as they often did, it's just part of their culture, they stole our stuff, they stole each other's stuff. It's just how they are to this day. And anyway, so
they just steal things. They have a natural tendency. Is that the way it goes, eh?
It's culture, and far be it from me to be disparaging towards another group of people's culture.
Yes.
I say this not to disparage. I say this to acknowledge. And anyway,
we notice broad. It's not all, but we notice broad characteristics, and that is a fact of life.
Exactly. So he says, Shaku says to Pieter Retief, listen, if you can go and get those cattle back, then we will, we'll give you this land, this huge piece. And they actually had a title deed that we have as the Boers till this day. We have the title deed saying that area does belong to us, as given, granted to us by Dingaan. And Retief went, and in such a timely matter returned with the other cattle that Dingaan thought him to be a wizard, or that is what is said. So they went in, but we actually think it's got more to do with the fact that the British conspired to have Pieter Retief killed because they were jealous at the the absolute expansion that was taking place, and the miraculous rate at which the Boers were colonializing, settling, colonializing. Not really. No, yeah. Sorry, I just had to correct myself there. It's the language barrier, but
Well,
we were settling this land, right?
Can I say to you there as well, it's a good point at which to say, I don't know if I ever really pondered this, and I wondered at other people as well, how does anybody own land, right? The way we do it in the modern world or in the Western world is we pay a bank and they create a deed called a mortgage, and then we own it, but we don't really, because the government then keeps taxing us. How can you be taxed on something, pay rents to the government if you really own it? It's never really yours then. And of course, even when you pay off the whole mortgage, as I say, it's you still have to pay property tax. So what does it mean to own land, and how does anybody own it, and how does the bank own it? Well, it's because somebody made a deal or an agreement or a treaty, or they came to some kind of understanding either with somebody else that if they were there, or they also laid claim to it. So I'm thinking then as well, somebody owns it by homesteading it, laying claim to it, making the land arable, fixing it up, building a home on it. And if nobody objects within, say, 1 year, 10 years, a generation, then surely that's the fairest way of saying they made it theirs, it is theirs. Well, can you maybe tell me your thoughts about what is homesteading and how it's part of the culture of South Africa, homesteading, and maybe the West in America too?
Well, I would rather just stick to my own, my own people, because I know them so much better. But it is well worth noting that before the Anglo-Boer War broke out, upwards of 90% of my people were landowners. They owned the land, and they were homesteaders, so to speak. They had small farms. They didn't have big farms. Small farms, self-sufficient, tending to their cattle, sheep, or whatever it was that they produced for their family. And that is why when the Anglo-Boer War broke out, so many of our people fought willingly, out of their own free will, because it was to defend their property, it was to defend their freedom. I think that property is a core tenet of freedom, to live in your own living space and to raise your children with your own values in a place that you can call home because you own it. But if you do not own something, then you're a tenant, right? You're not a home owner, you're just a tenant. You're just a passerby, a rootless cosmopolitan that moves from one place to another. You never really sprout any culture. You never, no real good culture sprouts from it. You don't develop as a human being. You are underdeveloped, and you are actually regressing. So that's why property rights is such an important thing to us. But now, even though we have property, we don't have rights. We have to pay taxes to a government, paying the people that say, if I want to go and register I registered recently for a cattle brand, because by law it is required that we do so. But it's well worth noting that the money that you pay to register that goes to the redistribution centrum in South Africa. So you have to, when you register to do something by law, that money is used to engineer the land theft in South Africa. So it's a ridiculous notion that
it's so
the
terrible.
government of the day is ridiculous.
That instead of any taxation, if you agreed to it, if there was an implied social contract, that you would assume the money should be used to help your own people. No, it's used to harm you in every different way, every possible way we haven't even imagined. We're learning that with US aid and what it was funding there recently, but that's not the subject of what we're talking about now, of course. But look, I suppose I did want to just highlight this aspect of how, at all turns, it seems to me, throughout history, that the white people, the Dutch people, the European people, they either settled land that nobody was using. There might have been some nomads who might have gone through the land occasionally, different times of the year maybe, but they hadn't developed agriculture, nothing like that. And where you met people then in the interior towards the Transvaal, or what is now called maybe a part of, well, Gauteng is part of it, and the KwaZulu type place. They keep renaming it then to erase your history. But in the what was the Orange Free State and Transvaal, where Dutch people were settling, you tried to come to agreements with, say, Zulus, and these people, they played nice. They smiled at you. They said, "Oh, if you do this for us, get me the cattle, bring it back, then we'll live together in harmony." But that wasn't so. They then there was a massacre. Can you tell us about that, and then the Blood River battle that followed, and why it was or how it was that there was this victory, which, you know, you figured settled the matter once and for all. Just to finish off that story.
Well, obviously, yes, the voortrekkers were attacked for an extended time. Like, it was on 6 February that Pieter Retief was murdered, and then subsequently a lot of attacks on tracking companies took place where they absolutely massacred them. There was one incident in which a young girl, I think she was 12, I have to brush up on my history on that, was stabbed 16 times by the Zulus, but she miraculously, by the grace of God, survived, and she was able to tell the people what happened to her. There's this epic retelling in a fictional way, you know, of the events that transpired by F.R. Venter in his books Gelofte Land, Geknelde Land, and so on. But they were attacked mercilessly by the Zulus. And bear in mind, when they were attacked by the Zulus didn't come to take prisoners. They came to do the job, make the job done. You know, so no survivors were left. And then the Boers went and they said, we need a leader now. Because those of us that are here, we've got leaders that are here with us, but we aren't finding each other. We are fighting, it's infighting. We can't seem to organize ourselves. Let's get a leader. So they dispatch Andries Pretorius. By the way, Andries Pretorius, his son named the capital of the Transvaal province or republic was called after Pretorius, namely Pretoria, you know. So
yes,
that's why, that's even our capital was, you know, founded. Anyway, so they went up to Transvaal. Andries Pretorius comes up from the Cape. He meets the Boers over there, and they say, Andries, you need to lead us. We need a solution here. Sarel Silje, being the leader of their, you know, their faith, their pastor or whatever, he decides that we need to make a vow, and they say to Andries that they chose him as the leader, and he said, well, you know, I will be a leader, but under the prerequisite that everybody agrees. And then everybody agreed that he must be the leader. And then he said, well, that's not enough. You have to cast the lot on me. And they cast the lot on him 3 times. And all 3 times it indicated that he was the leader. So it was seen as a divine anointment that he was by God chosen the man to lead the Boers.
Yeah.
And then, you know, they started making their preparations. 7 days before the battle took place, they every day would, because they had different, you know, religious affiliations. Every man would go to his little camp and they would pray and they would say the gelofte, the vow, and then, or recite it, and they would pray and they would sing a song, you know, a hymn to God or whatever. And then for 7 days they did this. And at the fateful day of December 16th, 1838, they clashed with the Zulus. And it is estimated that the Zulus were about 10,000, but it's anywhere between 10 to 20,000. Nobody really can give it the exact number. They stormed the lager. It's worth noticing that it was so foggy there in Natal, because Natal is probably closer to, Ireland or Scotland or something like that than it is to what you would imagine an African country to be, or a
Right.
South African country to be. And they couldn't see, they couldn't really see nicely, and the Zulus therefore had to come up very closely, or when they were very close, the shots started ringing, and they fired volley after volley, eventually, killing so many that the river, which the lager was built up against, ran literally red with blood, which is why it was called Blood River. And more than 3,000 of the Zulus were killed on that day. Only one Boer was injured by the grace of God, and they chased. The Zulus fled, and after that, a strafkommando, is how we called it, an exhibition that were to punish them, was sent after them, and they further beat the Zulus and waged a war against them. In retaliation to this brutal attack by the Zulus on the Retief and all of the tracking companies before him. But then it wasn't very long, and the English came under Lord Buller, and they annexed or is it General Buller? They annexed Port Natal. It was known as Port Natal, or Natalia. Sorry, the Republic of Natalia, and then the English came, they annexed it, and it was known as Port Natal.
Okay. And
so the history for blood.
Well, yeah. And that's the other thing I'm thinking of, like that again, a farmer, like so-called a Boer, a farmer, has to then not only become political, but become a historical student as well, a student of history, to learn your own history. Because, I do remember hearing about, say, for example, the settlement in the Western Cape was originally, and you've explained before in other spaces and podcasts and streams, whereby it was called something like the Cape of Doom or something like that, the Cape of Storms, that they're going to wreck the ships. But then they decided, no, let's call it the Cape of Good Hope. And they set up a settlement there in what became Cape Town, from the Vryburgers, the free citizens, to supply these ships with meat and grain maybe, and whatever else that the farmers produced. Now that's of course in the west, but you were talking about Pretoria there, and Natal over in the north and the northeast. So this is how the whole country got settled, and you've had to, and I see history sometimes as following the track of the Boer trackers. And when you're talking about the company there, of course, you're not talking about necessarily a company as the way we think of it as, but a collection of people who have their destiny and history collected together.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's different definitions for different, for different times and different peoples, but that's what it meant here. Like a track company was what they would call it. And
by the way, I just want to say, while we just have a little pause there for a moment, that there are plenty of people commenting on YouTube, and I'm not able to put them on screen because of the silly way I thought this would work, to have a redundancy, but my internet isn't, I think, capable of multi-streaming. However, I do want to acknowledge all the people who are listening and watching, and the comments there, and some very great comments. And I just want to say hello to a few people, and to let you know that they are watching, and they're certainly very interested in what's going on in South Africa. I just want to say hello to Darren Swift, 360 Eagle Eye, Arminius, Tony Nagy, Carolinus, Slow Boy, and there's a few other people there. I'm only just scrolling back here. Jerry, son of Mick. There is Salvador Deli, and Ulick, Kieran Martin, Johannes. There's somebody else called Johannes there. Or no, I don't know if that was you, but maybe it was somebody else called Johannes. But there's a lot of people there. Doc Holiday as well, I want to say hello to, and the New York Rednecks. So there's plenty of people there watching. And even though this is a small channel, of course, nothing like you'd get as far as an audience on Alex Jones or Owen Schroyer or Stu Peters. But the more people in all these little parts of the internet are talking about South Africa, the better. Because let's just say this: when you were talking about the girl being stabbed 12 times and miraculously she survived, well, the viciousness, it's not something in history. We see it all the time. For example, the New York subway, or in Germany, in Magdeburg, all these things. Whoever's doing it, whoever's behind it, there's this viciousness. They call us monsters. and racists and bigots and all these kind of words that are meant to shame us. But in fact, it's white people, wherever they go in the world, are being persecuted. Of course, not all. They're not all like that. But a lot of these people, you can see why they called, say, Africans like the Zulus savages, because they didn't seem to have anything holding them back from this kind of extreme violence that we see, of course, in farm murders. What about the violence in farm murders going on in South Africa?
Well, yet again, the farm murders are what I believe. So I'll give you a political definition for that, or motive for that. Tell you what the political motive for that would be. But I also want to say that I think that yet again, that is something that is cultural with them. And for that, formulating that argument, I want to tell you the story of a little town known as Potgietersrus. Now, Potgieter was one of the men that was one of the voortrekkers. You had, let me just check here to make sure so that I get this correct. I'm going to name all the major trackers, voortrekkers, sorry. I'm going to just get this here. I'm going to tell you the story of how that town came about, and then tell you a little, tragic tale. So there was Gerrit Maritz, Louis Trichardt, Piet Retief, Piet Eys, and Andries Hendrik Potgieter. Now, Andries Hendrik Potgieter, him and Sarel Cilliers also was present at the Battle of Blood River. They had a fight with the Matabeles, which was also a bloodthirsty bunch. They were the ones that, fled to Rhodesia, so you could just imagine. But in any way, Hendrik Potgieter, he had a son, Piet Potgieter. And this story is about the son of the tracker, Piet Potgieter. Hendrik Potgieter. The son's name is Piet Potgieter. So the reason why I know this is because my mother is part of a very prominent Boer family from Potgietersrus. So as children, we would always visit there, And my dad would always, every time we go there, they would take us to show us the tree of Moorddrif. Now, what is a drif in English? Let's just see so I can translate that for you guys. Sorry, I got some allergies, so apologies.
Listen, I really appreciate how conscientious you are of being sure that everything you say is correct and accurate. And I don't know offhand what a drif is, but I should. And a dorp as well. Can you explain what a dorp is, if you happen to know, in English?
What's a dorp? A dorp is a small town. It's like a village.
A small town, yeah.
A drift is the English words like a drift.
Yeah, a drift.
It's like a small, little stream that you have to go through, So Moorddrif, it's like murder drift.
Okay.
And the reason why it was called this is we don't know. It's not exactly recorded because these people were all wiped out. The Matabeles found them, and then they attacked them. And there's a tree that's a memorial to this day. The blacks have obviously vandalized it extensively, but it's a kameeldoring, which is a very hard wood, very, very hard wood. And the bark of the tree is called the babies, the small little babies. Their heads were all crushed off. The tree was completely obliterated. And all the women and men and children in that tracking company were completely wiped out. Then, actually, Paul Kruger, which became the president of South Africa later, they pursued this murderous band to bring justice to them, which is a part of our culture that we've lost. The Zulus, they've got their culture. Yeah. They still live their culture, with farmers and stuff like that. But we've lost our culture in retaliation, unfortunately.
I wasn't. Did you say Paul Kruger? Is that what you said? Paul Kruger or Paul?
Kruger. Yeah, Paul Kruger was there. Paul Kruger was, I believe, the guy that led the attack on because this king or chiefman, he lodged himself and barricaded himself in a cave. And Piet Potgieter, the son of Hendrik Potgieter, it was said that he was a very, he was a hothead, and he was very always on the go, never finding, never unrest. Yes, my English is failing me so much.
Oh no, you're fine. And in fact, yeah, this happens to me, even though I don't speak Afrikaans. I'm always trying to think of the right word, and I can't grasp it in English, even though it's my first language. But I just want to sort of say that I am reluctant with regard to the farm murders. I'm reluctant to tell people about the gruesome stories that I've heard or read about, even in mainstream papers. And I think people are becoming aware of the extreme kind of brutality that is visited on people who might be living alone or live on a large piece of land. Like, for example, I heard that now that why South Africa, I think, is in the news is because the government has officially told through the law of the day that any black person, whether they be Zulu or whether they be Xhosa or Matabele, who are now in Rhodesia or wherever, that they can just say, "Hello, farmer. I'm now staking a claim to this land, and I'm putting up even just a metal shack here. And if you don't kick him off your land in 24 hours, then it's his." And so for many years, he's been told he has a right to retribution, to your land, to everything you owned. And even people like Julius Malema and other people in politics in the ANC have said things like, "I'm going to kill the white man, I'm going to kill the children, I'm going to kill the dogs, I'm going to kill the cats." And everybody cheers this. So they've been incentivized. Yeah.
That is actually, sorry to interject, that's actually Andile and Kutama that said that. Julius Malema said that revolutionaries must be willing to kill. There is a time in every revolution that you must that you must kill. And he said that specifically the throat of whiteness must be cut. So Julius Malema has made very clear his genocidal intent. But I just want to, I think it's a good question, right? But I want to bring the focus to it that farm murders is by no stretch of the imagination a new phenomenon. We just expressed that it's just black on white violence, with the story of Moordrif,
Yeah.
And the exact same things are done to this day, from that day to this day. So for the people that say, "Oh, you were mean to the blacks, the poor little defenseless blacks, you were mean to them, you created the apartheid system." Well, first and foremostly, we created the apartheid system to repatriate people that were forcefully brought here in 1910 with the Union of South Africa. But secondly, if you understand the barbarism to which these people are privy to, then you would 100% support actions far greater than peacefully repatriating them, if you knew what they were willing to do. Till this day, we are attacked viciously. Children are boiled alive. They are often drowned in boiling water. They are burned with iron,
yes, with the clothes iron. They hold the clothing iron next to their face, and
absolutely. And there was recently an English couple actually, in which they took an angle grinder and a drill, and they drilled into the kneecaps of the husband of the lady, and they cut him with an angle grinder, his legs with an angle grinder. One very famous, one less known attack, my grandfather's from Potgieter, their neighbors were attacked, and the husband and the wife, elderly people, come from church the afternoon, and they go inside the house. And as the husband pushes over, but he's thinking to himself, "Where's my dogs now?" And as he's pushing open the door, and he's putting his hand forward, his arm forward, they strike with an iron pipe, his arm broken. Then they take him, beat him up, leave him alive, they don't kill him. Take his wife, string her up against a tree. And I know we're reluctant to speak about this, but this is actively denied. The government denies this. The filthy traitors in our country denies this. Obviously, people that would typically be into film, lawyers, and comedians with surnames such as Herzog or Oppenheimer or Goldberg. These people also denied, so just worth noticing. But they string her up against a tree or tie her up against a tree. Take boiling water and a cloth, and they put that cloth inside her mouth, take the lead pipe that they broke her husband's arm with, and actually shove that cloth with the pipe in her throat, tearing her, what do you call your throat? Tearing her throat, and then she basically drowned in her own blood, suffocating. And they left the husband to see this. They left him to witness this, because it is a terror campaign to incentivize our people to leave. And that is why we are so unhappy with Trump creating a further incentive for our people to leave. Our blood has drenched this country. We built it, we made it, we have spent so much sacrifice to be a people here unto ourselves, and we want the world to acknowledge our right to be a people and our rightful claim, which is the only rightful claim to this country, before we will be happy. That is why we don't want asylum, because what's the difference between Julius Malema taking my land by killing me, or Ramaphosa taking my land by expropriation, or somebody else saying, hey, flee your country? The effect remains the same. I lose my fatherland.
Absolutely.
I lose my livelihood. I will not be happy in America. My people will not be happy in America. Sure, we can assimilate to other white countries, but would you leave Ireland? If somebody posed this to you, would you leave England? Would you leave Germany? Are you going to rationally expect a German or a Frenchman to leave his country? It's ridiculous. It's absolutely nonsensical, and it should not be entertained.
It's a great thing that you have said that, and I think that's pretty much the core principle of your political platform or your drive for what you say, because a lot of people might be mistaken. And I know none of the audience here, I don't think, thinks that Trump is on our side or he's our guy. But a lot of people might be mistaken in thinking that, oh, this is great. You see, now that Trump is elected, he's going to save the Boer or the Afrikaners or white people in South Africa by saying, that's all right, you can come to North America as refugees. But as you've just explained there, that accomplishes the goal of not exactly, say, people like Cyril Ramaphosa or the ANC or Julius Malema or black people in South Africa. Not really. It's the people behind them who we've all noticed. And as you say, the Oppenheimers and people like that, other people whose names end in Berg, and you kind of go, oh, so it's those people. That's how they conquer, and that's how they gain territory. That's how they conquer the world, really, one nation at a time, by uprooting people such as yourself, and then do the propaganda war where people start to think, oh, it's a good thing that people are uprooted as long as all white people are brought to North America. But of course, in North America, in USA and Canada, their countries are being overrun by people who in a generation will start to say, oh, we were always here for centuries. They'll just rewrite history. So yeah, there's people like you who are at the bleeding edge of this. Well, you could say it's a war for our race, our lives, the lives of your children, and our culture, everything of our heritage, all of Western civilization. It's at stake here, and you're on the battlefront.
Absolutely, which is why we will not leave. But to contextualize it for people, perhaps, if I could, maybe my words fail me, but my example, my analogy won't. Because people do tend to think in terms of association. there is a state in the Middle East known as the State of Israel, right? And Trump, would you agree, John, that Trump acknowledges their right to existence?
Well, hasn't he said as well, oh, the Palestinians, yeah, they can all just be refugees as well. It's a very parallel thing, isn't it?
Yes. So, and then there's the Palestinians. Now, if you want to know who Trump is supporting in this, he doesn't say to the Israeli diaspora, listen, or to the Israelis living in Palestine, listen, you guys will repatriate you to America, etc., or to wherever. He doesn't say, no, we're going to send you to Egypt. He doesn't say that. No, he says, no, we're going to take the Palestinians and we're going to put them in Ireland, Spain, Egypt. So that's what they're saying. So it's a reasonable man can deduce that he supports Israel in their claim for Palestine. Now, but take that through to the South African context. Did Trump say that he's going to give asylum to the Afrikaners, or did he say he's going to give asylum, he's going to organize asylum for the blacks in South Africa to solve the problem? No, he said, no, we're going to give the Afrikaners. So in his mind, Afrikaners occupy the same place as what Palestinians do. He acknowledges black people's claim to South Africa, but he doesn't acknowledge our claim to South Africa. And that's why we are unhappy. So that's why I am even in a place where I don't want to thank him for it, because why should I say thank you if you don't acknowledge my people's right to being a people? A people without a fatherland are in an act of genocide. If we move to America, then there's no America. There will be no Afrikaners. In two generations, Afrikaners will be gone. It's over. It's not like the Irish that moved to America and there's still mainland Ireland. No, we don't have a fatherland outside of South Africa. But I hope you can see this in this analogy, who and where his true allegiances lie.
For sure. And that's the thing. It's a subtle trick. But thinking that people are saved, oh, don't worry, I'll uproot you from, say, whether it be the Palestinians from Gaza, or whether it's Afrikaners, Dutch derived people who have made their lives for centuries in South Africa. It's not a rescue mission to say, oh, let me extricate you, let me pluck you out of where you've been living for generations and bring you to America. Not at all. What that is doing is solidifying the gains that they have made into taking your territory. You don't want to leave. You don't want to abandon, because that's basically just giving up. What really should be happening is, and what should have happened 20 years ago, or really 30 years ago in 1994, was that America, if it was really a friend to European people or South African people, should have gone over there with its military and helped the Boer fight back against the Zulus and whoever else were behind them.
Sorry, I muted myself. Absolutely, John, I agree, but yeah. I would go further than that in say, or I would say, put it this way, not go further. I'd put it this way, that America doesn't even need to physically intervene. They just need to stop intervening. If they stopped intervening, and they gave us the right, they said, we acknowledge that these people are doing something bad to you and that you have a right to defend yourself, then I don't even think we need their help. The only reason,
if they just stop helping, if the American military stopped helping, then you'd be fine. Yeah,
we'd be fine. But right now, we are being forced by the bullies to take this beating. The reason why we are being slaughtered in the way that we are is because we don't have the right to defend ourselves. If we do, we are jailed. So many times when people defend themselves, then they get jailed. So, it creates the impression that these blacks are so powerful and that they can just rule us, but they can't. The only reason that they are winning is because we're not fighting back. Because it's not because we fear them, it's because we fear a retaliation from America. We fear a retaliation from the rest of the world.
For sure, you've been forced essentially to have your hands tied behind your back, and you've said a few times now that they do fear an actual physical war because they can keep winning bit by bit in the gradual changing of political I suppose grabs like this, like just make new laws and then they get settled and then they go a bit more. It's the ratchet technique, the Fabian technique. Slowly, it's no decisive battle, just a gradual wearing down of the other side. But what you realize is that's why we keep losing. If you actually had a battle, and you're saying they know it, if you had a physical battle, there's still enough farmers that you would actually win and you'd be able to hold your territory. And that's why they try to avoid things going kinetic, as they say.
Exactly. Well, look at the space we had last night, right? There were a lot of blacks that came to listen. And today you can see Twitter is all over. They are spreading on TikTok and on Twitter, on Black Twitter and on Black TikTok. They're spreading clips of what I said over there. And it's not like they're, we're going to, we're going to, some of them, the more dumber ones of them are like, oh, yeah, we're going to do this to you, we're going to do that to you. But the ones that are a little bit more intelligent are like, no, this is not what we should be doing. How can you say this? No, we should pursue completely different avenues. Because as soon as we say that, hey, we've had enough of this nonsense and we're not going to take this anymore, then they run scared. We didn't even have to physically, the situation didn't even have to physically become kinetic before they become scared. Because they know the potential that lives in us. It is we that have forgotten what we are capable of. That's the problem. And coinciding with that, it is that we are constantly made to forget it. The names of our towns are changed. The names of our heroes are changed. Our heroes are disparaged. There is this nonsense argument that there's a difference between a boer and an Afrikaner, the typical Jewish argument. What even is white? Sorry. No. Yeah. Not to be. I see that it seems like John might be having some technical issues on his side.
And I'm so sorry about any technical issues on my side. I really regret it, but I'll try to push on anyway, and I'll just keep talking and you can let me know when you hear me. I will say to people that I was in the spaces that you were in there yesterday. And I can see you being frustrated. All right, I'm talking and I can see you now, it's terrible for me. I'm so upset and disappointed that this is the way that it's going. But Johannes, if you can hear me, whenever you hear me, let me know when you can hear me coming back. But what I'll say is that I have been in spaces with Johannes over the last few days, and listening to what he's been saying and listening to what other people have been saying. And some black people or some people who do not like what he has to say have come in as well. And I think it's always an excellent thing to hear what they have to say. Johannes, can you tell me, can you hear me at the moment?
I can hear you fine, John. I can hear you fine. If you can see,
oh, that's great.
Me, I am here. Yes.
I can see, I can hear you. That's excellent. Right. There are technical difficulties, but we'll push on. I have maybe up to the top of the hour with you, but we'll see how it goes, and as long as the connection lasts. What I want to say to you is that there was a man who came in yesterday, a black man, and he was called Dr. something or other, and he said he had a degree in international politics and psychological well, something to do with basically whatever his degrees were. It was basically he'd been taught somewhere in London or England that he was basically capable of doing everything and more that white people were able to do. It's just that we've been holding him down. Now he has an education, of course. These same people like Oppenheimers have told him how to speak all nice, and he offered to, like, I have to say, like, he was saying, oh, I give you my submission, here's what I say to you, and would you agree? And he was being very diplomatic, right? I think maybe that was one of his degrees. And as you're saying there, just the thought of the Boers standing up and saying, right, we've had enough, maybe made him say, I'd better sort of entreat this man and come to him gently and in a polite way and say, can't we work together? Ought we not to have an equitable redistribution of land? I'm not saying I want to take all the land off the Boers. I'm just saying maybe some people who are productive of all races should be given the land, but still trying to say that, oh, some authority who is maybe of his people will be the arbiters or deciders, and what you're saying is, no, we've had enough. We don't want to have any more negotiations because, like the Battle of Blood River or the massacre at the creek there, we don't trust any agreements. Agreements mean nothing anymore because we see how people go back on them. We just want to be in charge of ourselves.
Exactly. And then there's also, there's also the thing that he says that merely to disarm the argument, but to attain the same ends, So the idea that they will stop because they've made an agreement with you, you can see what they did with Peter Retief when they made an agreement with him. They disregarded their agreement. So the agreement will stand if white people pursue a certain avenue with these people and approach, then it will set us on a path. Every path we take has an inevitable end, and dialogue with these people is not what they respect. They respect force. They respect us showing them that we are stronger, and we are stronger. So I'm not flattered or swayed by somebody with a doctorate that would say, no, there should be a peaceful solution, because there can be no peaceful solution. They have visited violence on us for hundreds of years, And when I say I'm not advocating for violence, not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that there can be no solution in which we negotiate over that which belongs to us, and we sacrifice something that belongs to us. We are no longer willing to put anything on the table. If anybody like that espouses this views that there must be a peaceful way, it can be pursued on the sole prerequisite that we will be making the demands and not them. If they say to us, we wish to pursue peace, then we say, yes, we can pursue peace, but you leave. Nothing short of that. You leave. We will not take any terms outside of that. Leave, and there can be peace. Stay. Well, here's the thing. We're not going to leave, but we're also not going to continually just tolerate our people being slaughtered. So you make the decision. It's entirely up to you.
I think things have been pushed to a breaking point here in all of our countries. I think most people, if they're honest, they realize, look, we tried it. We tried it for many decades, and in your case, centuries, but we cannot live together. And all of the problems that so-called multiculturalism, or rainbow nation, as they called it in South Africa post-1990, 1994, when Nelson Mandela took over, that there was this fictional utopia that was going to somehow evolve, where all people were just going to learn to put their differences aside. But the fact of the matter is, there are differences in broad strokes as to how people of different races like to live. They have different standards of thought, different standards of living, that they just naturally sort of fall into patterns of behavior that simply cannot be changed. And the people behind it, the Oppenheimers and so on, and there was a woman called Miriam Sussman and all these kind of people, and of course Joe Slovo, who was whispering in Nelson Mandela's ear, all these people, they knew it damn well. And this is the chaos they hoped to create so that they could come out with the calming influence of, oh, well, let us take control then, and we'll be your new masters in this new world. So I think I'm back now anyway, Johannes. And look, I'm so sorry about this. Apologies again. There's nothing I can do about it, unfortunately, at this stage. But if you can hear me, what I'll say is that you are a great admirer of Henrik Furger. and he was a prime minister, a politician in the 1960s, who is supposedly like the father or the architect of apartness, basically living apart. If you could go, would you go back to apartheid, or is that even enough by now? What do you mean by we need to just separate?
Okay, so Hendrik Verwoerd was not the father of apartheid, but they call him that just to sort of put more gravitas on his person, to accuse him, sort of as the same thing as what they would do with certain leaders in Germany, at certain periods of time. They would attribute things to them that are not attributable to them. But in any way, so he was not the father of apartheid. It was JBM Hertzog and what do you call him, DF Malan. Now, I'm going to see here if I've got some photos that I can share with you that can show the suggestions of JBM Hertzog. And then I'll talk on that, what is it that we would like. So if we can share this, if we can share my screen, I'm hoping that it won't make any problems for you, but then people can
understand. Please go ahead and try and share it. Yeah.
There we go. So there you can see. Can you see that?
I'm just adding it to the stage here now. I think it's coming up. There we are. Okay.
Here you can see this is the great General JBM Hertzog. He was a big politician in South African history. At one point fought the political struggle single-handedly. But it was him and people like DF Malan and J.G. Strydom that were the people that formulated the fathers of apartheid. Here you can see the black is all the territories that would be homelands to non-whites that would be given to them, if you can see that, because those are areas,
and it's a lot of territory, prime real estate on the coastline as well.
It's the best territory in South Africa. It's literally the most fertile pieces in this country. So yeah, they've got no claim to the white areas is ours. That's completely ours. It belongs to us. No questions asked. They can make no reasonable claim to that. That is just how that is. And here, for the people that want to see what the voortrekkers look like, that is Gerrit Maritz, that is Louis Trichardt, Pieter Retief, the guy that was slaughtered so brutally. This is Piet Uys. And this was Andries Hendrik Potgieter. So then I'll stop sharing and I'll tell you what do we see as a solution for South Africa. Well, first and foremost, our movement seeks to reawaken our people, rebuild them, or awaken our people, rebuild them and free them. But if a peaceful solution were obtainable, my suggestion would be that the Cape Malayans or the Coloureds be moved to Malaysia, where they would better assimilate, so closer to their culture. They'll even tell you that we don't have a culture, white people don't have a culture, it's Malayan culture, blah, blah, blah. So they have even acknowledged themselves. If they were moved to Malaysia, and then the blacks were moved, I wouldn't say that we have to have this two-state solution. I think the apartheid government was very, gracious in allocating these lands. I think that it can be done, I suppose, but I don't see how foreign entities won't do that to use that to aggravate further a conflict and facilitate a conflict in South Africa. So it may be altogether better if they just left South Africa entirely and, moved to other black countries that would be willing to take them, which is not a far off stretch if you think about the fact that, South Africa has got a small population of blacks, with roughly like 40 million or something. So that's not, in the context of Africa, that is not so big,
Yeah. Nigeria alone has something like 250 million, as far as I know, but it's up to them to manage the numbers of their own people. And Africa as a continent is massive. I think that's something that people don't understand or comprehend, because South Africa itself is pretty much as big as the whole continent of what we know as Europe.
Yes, absolutely. And what this would also do is, I think it would be fair to all the things that we have lost, all the suffering of my people. It would be good if those territories are given to us as compensation for, this 30 years of lies. Well, more than 30 years, but this 30 years of direct suffering and genocide that's been wreaked and wrought on my people. So yeah, that would be my suggestion in terms of a peaceful solution. But in terms
I
of
like
sharing,
it, yeah.
sharing the country, I don't think we can. I don't see how we can. I think that all those pursuits in which we have to share this country needs to be abandoned. It needs to be abandoned immediately.
Yes. I like the attitude because it's not just, you basically don't settle for less of a concession that we've already had. You don't say things like, oh, well, just allow us to do this a little bit more, or don't persecute us as much. Because there's a lot of people who say things like, oh, I want to return to Canada when it was like say 90% white, or I'd like saying, well, of course, there's a lot of I want to go back to Africa, so they'll have to have some territory as well, and they're already making concessions before they even get to the negotiating table. What you're saying is, this is our country, we want it back, and we'll have it back, and there's nothing else to say about it. So I think what your whole political platform, if you want to call it a platform or a party, is to say, you're not anymore going to be ashamed. You're not going to be already asking permission like you did anymore. You're just saying, this is the way it's going to be. And I think that you're very inspiring to a lot of men and women because you keep it simple and you're forthright. And could you tell me a bit about, maybe, like, is it a political party? Tell me about, what's the flag behind you mean? What does it represent to you? What is it? What's the Vryburger Movement? Is a political party? Is that what it's turning into? Tell me about you as a political man.
Us going forward, like I said, we've got those three tenets on which we've got a manifest that people can read. It's unfortunately in Afrikaans, but the flag behind me is built off the Vryburger flag. So the blue sea with the red cross was what they used to settle the interior of South Africa, But the eagle is taken from the weapon of the Union of Transvaal. So we obviously just spread its wings, indicating movement, indicating that we are on the move, that we are not pacifist. And the spear that is in the talons of this eagle is indicative of the Zulu spear, the violence of black people that is finally broken. So you will see that spear, it's assegai, it is broken, indicating that we will break black on white violence and we will free ourselves eventually from it. Our political vehicle is a movement, because we stand no chance in a one man, one vote, where Afrikaners are roughly speaking 7 million in this country. And the black population are about, let's say, 60 million if you put in the Indians and all the non-whites that have voting right. If you add them, then there is no way that we can politically and lawfully regain our territory. So we seek to unify our people, and we seek to build a white unity around the world, because of course similar thing is happening to white people in every other country. We seek to build a network of white nationalist white nationalists that work towards obtaining their countries again. It is unfortunately at this point in time not going to be achieved. It's not achievable inside of Parliament, but the Vryburger movement will ultimately become a political party when in the future we assume power in our own territory. Then it will morph into a political party, and there will probably be a name change and stuff like that, to the national unity. So that is how I see ourselves going forward, forging allegiances with other similar organizations worldwide, and then unifying white people beyond the political will that we just discussed. We can no longer make concessions. You only make concessions until you surrender eventually. So if you go back to the 90s in Canada, you will end up in 2025 of Canada in a couple of years. It It is exactly the 90s that led to the 2020s. So we can do that. It doesn't work. It's been tried, but too dear a price has been paid for us as leaders to pursue the same solutions. It is time for us to be honest and forthright. And I oftentimes say, many people say that the problem is complex, and I reject that. I reject that wholeheartedly, and I think all of us should. It is not a complex problem to solve. It is simple. White people and black people shouldn't share a country anywhere in the world. White people should have their own countries. There's nothing evil in saying that. There's nothing hard to comprehend about that. That is just logical. And it's actually an holy approach. It is something that would please the Almighty Creator of God, because He created the boundaries. He gave us a different appearance. He gave us different skeletal structures. We are different. Okay. So we may not listen against God. Now, what is difficult and what is complex is aligning white people with those views and mustering the courage and the willpower to espouse those views. But the views are simple and the solution is simple. But getting people to embrace the solution is what is hard. And that is why we must fight. That is why we can no longer be silent. That is why we can never ever fear outcomes. And that is why we can never ever pursue outcome-based policies. We must pursue principle-based policies. We must say South Africa for the white man, Ireland for the white man, England for the white man, because it is a principle. It is a matter of national sovereignty. And if you do not have national sovereignty, then by definition you are under an attack. And you are in an act of war, whether that be one that is fought on the battlefield or one that is fought in parliament. But we cannot any longer sign away with ink that which was bought with blood. So be it, if people were to call me a simpleton, I have no problem with that. But they cannot bring any arguments against what we espouse politically, because what we espouse politically is the only peaceful solution for the world, and that is us living separately.
It's so true, and it shows how much we have had our minds brainwashed, subjugated by all the propaganda, that so many of us still think somewhere in our minds that it's somehow evil to want our own countries and to live amongst our own people exclusively. It's amazing that many people would think, oh, that's a horrible, terrible thing to say. But as I've heard it put another way, like, access to white people is not a human right of other people in the world. We have a right to live amongst in our own nations. And as you say, if we don't, then we're not a sovereign people. And it's a great phrase to say there as well. I think it's worth repeating the motto that you cannot sign away with ink what was hard purchased or earned or bought by blood. So that's fantastic. And look, I'm so sorry again for the internet connection issues here. There are still people watching and commenting, and I want to say that as I just want to say, call out of the men here. Adam Young says, thank you to Johannes for the opportunity to voice our cause. We need your support in getting momentum for our movement, freedom for the Boer and freedom for the white man. So I think there is momentum gathering, and we're not going to be apologetic for our existence anymore or for wanting to survive. It doesn't mean we hate anyone else. It just means we love our own people, we want to survive.
Well, yes, that is true. It doesn't necessarily mean that our driving force behind our political movement is not the hate of our enemies. It is the love of our people. But the hate for our enemies is a consequence of the love of our people. So if we do not hate and if we are not allowed to hate our enemies, then we cannot say that we love our people. Right now, you can see people in YouTube comment section saying the most atrocious things towards white people the very first moment that we indicate a will to separate from them, they attack us for it. And that alone should be alarming for any white people that say that we are evil for saying what we say. Ask yourself this: when we say that we merely want to be left alone, we do not seek to have a conflict with them. Why is it that they violently attack us for espousing such views? Who are the ones that are truly evil then? And if we must become something different to what our nature is to secure our nature as it is originally, then we must become that for a temporary moment, to ensure that our national character is not distorted and is not done away with. It is too important, and everything is at stake right now. We can no longer allow ourselves to be defined by our enemies. We can no longer have people. It is as I had an argument with Pieter Groenewald. Perhaps I'll tell you this little tale, and maybe people can take something from it. There was the man Pieter Groenewald. You can Google him if you wish to know. His name is Dr. Pieter Groenewald. Somebody made a meme about him in which they said that they were Freemasons and stuff like that. And Pieter Groenewald then contacts me via WhatsApp and sends me a message. He says, Meneer Agenbach, why I know you as a man of integrity. How can you share things like this about me? I thought we discussed about it. And we discussed that I was not part of anything like the Freemasons. Then I said, well, here's the thing. If you espouse the same views and pursue the same goals as them, then it doesn't matter if you're a member of them. You are still embarking on the same path and thereby creating an association with them. And then he said to me, well, if you listen to why is it that you hold these views? Then I said, well, simply because you stand for gay rights. And then he said to me, well, are you're not very smart and you weren't listening, because I said that I stand for equal rights. And if you're saying that you don't, are you saying that you don't stand for equal rights for these people that have this sexual orientation? I said, absolutely. Absolutely. If I were to be policymaker, I wouldn't have equal rights. I'm going to say that you have in policy, are you going to give driving licenses to the blind? Are you going to put blind people in cars? That is dangerous. You can endanger people's lives. And they said to me, what a ridiculous thing to say, because then you are basically saying that they don't have the right to live. And what I said to him then was, what I am saying is that through the merits and consequences of their own life choices, they will not be naturally bringing about an offspring to which an offspring and children, and therefore they have no right in commenting on our futures, since they will not be there. So only people that can contribute in a prolific way and a positive way are allowed to comment on the future of my people. And since blacks and non-whites, people that reside in Israel genetically, since they can never be a part of us, genetically speaking, they have no right to make any decisions on our lives and how we should rule ourselves. In fact, them insisting that they must and that they have the right to do so is evil in and of itself. And that is why we have got a moral obligation to fight against it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm still here, but hopefully you can hear me. Again, so sorry for the technical issues here. But yeah, self-determination. It shows how everything in this world has been turned upside down. Their propaganda has made good. They call good evil and evil good. you know, just the fact that white people or people of European origin want to have the right to determine their own destiny, they say, oh, that's evil. Or that white people want to live alone. They don't want to have to cohabit with black people or people from India or wherever else. They go, well, that's them being supremacists or whatever. And supremacist means evil as well. All these things. It's amazing how with wordplay, they have made us feel guilty for things we never did. And all we're guilty of is simply wanting to survive. How dare you, they say to us, more or less, want to survive. Why do you even want to have children? Just die, go away. And meanwhile, they'll constantly say, oh, they were genocided, or there was an attempted genocide, or oh no, it's another genocide. Everything that they accuse us of course, is an admission on their part, on their behalf. But Johannes, while I have you here, maybe further, we'll see how long we can go. And I don't know, I'm frustrated with the technical issues, and I really appreciate your patience here. I want to, the fact that I think that I do have listening that I probably I don't see them, but I see how the comments are going. There's a lot, so I think a lot of people from Canada, and some of the people who I have made contact with over the last few years on YouTube are listening as well. I would like to YouTube and do X and be part of to be a gathering momentum of people. As you said there, Johannes, you're not necessarily a leader of a political party, but you are leading a movement. You've decided that you looked into all the other supposed leaders or self-appointed leaders, like, say, for example, the Roach of Sightlanders. What has he done? I don't know if he is sincere. They don't seem to be moving the needle at all. But this is what you're doing, a genuine grassroots or ground movement from the earth, from the farmers. So what would you say then, as far as your optimism? Do you think that there is now genuinely a critical mass of people building where it's going to go mainstream, that we're not going to be sorry anymore, we're going to survive, we're going to fight for our survival? Do you think it's just X making me think so, or do you think it's representative of public opinion changing now for our survival?
I think that they would like us to think that it's only X and that it's only an echo chamber. But I think that if people were to hear what we had to say, then tomorrow you would see an upheaval in world politics. I think people are tired of the status quo. I think that not only would we have support, we would have the most support. That is why we are actively suppressed in terms of viewership and stuff like that. They want to keep us away from, big platforms. I take, for instance, my TikTok. My TikTok in South Africa absolutely blew up until they started shadow banning it, deleting accounts, and the comments of people were absolutely positive. And speaking about not people in comfortable positions, but working class, the average man that is disenfranchised. He wants to hear what we are saying, the views that we are espousing. He wants to hear somebody is standing up for him. He doesn't want to hear about democracy or this thought collectivism, because here's the thing. We have to understand that it is not ideas that give life to people, but it is people that give life to ideas. And that is why we as a people stand up. I stand for the working honor. I stand for the worker. I stand for the white man. That is what they so long have yearned to hear. And when they see Donald Trump, that is what they feel that he says. And Donald Trump as a political phenomenon should be indicative of this. So no, I do not believe that we are still far away from that point. I think society, if they were to hear our message, they would align with us. White society, at least, they would align with us because it's the desire of the majority of us. And the only reason why we know that is because they're given the voice to engineer. But I can see it in South Africa in times that I went to political gatherings. I alone, without having a movement or anything behind me. Within 20 minutes, everybody in the room was cheering. Within 20 minutes, they were There were men, hard men, moved to tears with the things that we said. So explain that to me. Explain to me then, why is that a phenomenon if we are not representative of the spirit of our people and what they truly desire?
You really are, Johannes, a very inspiring sort of a person. As you said there, it's people who give life to ideas, and the spoken word is much more powerful than just the written word on a page. And so we need people like you for sure to inspire all the rest of us. I think what you're advocating for is that we all basically pick ourselves up spiritually as well as physically, and no longer be browbeaten, that we unify collectively wherever we are. And so I just want to say at this point, I have put your contact details, your website, etc., in the description of this video. And I'll remind people at the end of how they can contact you and look you up and read a bit more.
Oh, I think we lost John again there. I don't know if you're speaking, John, now.
Johannes, I think maybe we might be back now. What I would like to... a lot of people think that maybe the solution is places like Orania, which is a landlocked little town or village, and you're very familiar with it. I know you've said this answer many times, but just for the listeners here who may not have heard you before, people might be mistaken by thinking that Orania, if we all just retreat into our little Oranias, then we'll be saved. But all that's doing is putting us in danger and retreating. You don't advocate for Orania, do you? And can you also speak to the idea that it may actually be a psychological operation, or worse than that, it may be action controlled at the top by the you-know-whos?
So I understand my people's desire for peace, because we have got conflict fatigue. We are so tired of fighting and struggling for our right to be a people everywhere in the world. We are so tired of being gaslit and the name calling. We're so tired of being made out to be evil just because we want to be a people. So I understand that people are tired, but it is moments in time that define us. And this is a moment that will set the stage for the future. Are we going to choose to believe in the politics of the obtainable, or are we going to set ourselves a new vision of the politics that seems unobtainable, but that is the politics that can inspire change? That is the politics that can inspire movement within Europe. So when it comes to Orania, I think it holds a spiritual danger for us, in that it teaches us to retreat and to accept the terms of our enemies. Our enemies say South Africa belongs to them. We should say no, it does not belong to you. We look at the people of Orania. They are not evil. They are good white people. They're just afraid and intimidated because every vehicle, every political vehicle and societal propaganda, media vehicle is aligned against them and telling them that they are evil for doing what they want. Even Orania, which is a peaceful enclave and settlement, they were attacked by blacks. They openly, last night in the space, a guy came in, a black that lives in Texas, came in and said that we're coming for Orania. We're not going to leave you with peace. So I want white people to understand that even though you are tired, I understand that. We're all tired. But we can never lose hope. We must fight until we are free. If we retreat now, and if we allow ourselves to believe in false hope, then it would have been all for naught. And then it doesn't matter if you became tired. You will still be persecuted till the very end. So it is better for us now to muster our courage, to inspire each other, to say, take my hand, brother. There is a hope for a future, but that future must be for us exclusively in our countries. And then will we have a chance. But when it comes to the leadership of Orania, I know that they are corrupt because they are headed by AfriForum and funded by AfriForum in a great extent. And AfriForum are people that denounce white nationalism. They outright say white nationalism must be fought. Ernst Roots, the guy, and Kali Kriel, the guy is leading the charge against expropriation without compensation. Why does Kali Kriel go to the World Congress of Minorities in Tel Aviv? Why does he have to go there? Why doesn't he tell the Congress for these people? Hey, got stuff to say. We want to talk with our people. It's time for us as a race to come together. It's time for the English, the Americans, the Australians, and the Afrikaners to come together to a table and say, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? We have to fix our countries collectively. No more minority congresses in Tel Aviv. What about a Volks nationalist congress in South Africa? What about that? What about we do that rather than run to Tel Aviv to try and find out what these people are teaching us? And also they want to, Irania espouses the view that we are a minority. And I want to fight against terminology here, because political terminologies are indicative of political will. I'm going to say that again. Political terminology is indicative of political will. It is indicating the direction in which you are moving. So, when we call ourselves a minority, we acknowledge our enemy as the superior and as having the more rightful claim. But it doesn't make sense in America, because in America, even though they are the majority, white people still cater to the minority. But in South Africa, even though we are the minority, we still also cater to the majority. So how does that work? You have to ask yourself that. And then we have to get to a point where we say, okay, we are not a minority within a group. We are a people. And South Africa is our country. And even if the world were to invade this country and want to seek residence here, it wouldn't matter. Our minority status doesn't define us. Our history defines us. Our genetics defines us. And our faith defines us. And we never live long enough that our faith can be reduced to what we believe is possible. Because never ever has that been the guiding hand behind Europe. We always had the spirit of conquest and chasing that which seems impossible. That is how cathedrals were built. That is how civilizations and emperors were built. That is why we must not seek peace and retreat. We must seek justice for our people. We must seek to have our own countries once again. And that is why I caution in the strongest possible way against outcomes such as Irania. There is no temporary solution. Temporary solutions become permanent solutions, and you know it. Have you ever fixed the pipe around your house in which your wife said, "Oh, John, please fix this leak for me," and you take a bit of duct tape, and then 3 years later you walk past this pipe and you say, "Oh, damn, this looks terrible. Why did I use duct tape to fix this leak?" We cannot use duct tape when it comes to our people. We need to use real solutions.
I have done it, and you're absolutely right. In politics, there's no such thing as, or there's nothing more permanent, they say, than a temporary solution in politics, for sure. I really admire the way you speak. It really is inspiring. It's rousing. It reminds us all we're not going to be sorry for what we want anymore, and what we want is, as you say, our own territory, our own nations, for our own people. So we don't have to worry about who is a minority, who is a majority. It's just us, ourselves. Gets rid of all the problems. It keeps us nothing. And look, I do want to, somebody there called Dua, I shouldn't acknowledge him really, but Dua Muhammad anyway, he's saying, you guys are retarded, and I am so stupid that I can't even keep a stream going properly, right? That's true, that, right? I'm too stupid to do a stream properly, right? But already he's bargaining. He's saying, "Okay, guys, I'll give you this other night." That's it, all right? So already he's negotiating,
John.
You know,
Proving what we say. So, John, you should never refer to yourself as stupid. I've spoken too many times with you to know that you are a brilliant man. You should rather ask yourself, why is this person that is not white commenting on our matters? And when we speak about how we want to carry ourselves and organize ourselves, why is he being disparaging? Because he's trying to discourage you. Because what you are doing is intimidating him. You know, he wants you to be focused on the inconsistencies or the small little problems. But this flag here behind me has got two sides. It was brought to me by an Australian friend. It was his first attempt at making a flag, right? And he brought it to South Africa as a token of, support for us. If I were to turn it around, you would see that there's many little errors and stuff like that. But on this side, there's not a lot of errors, and it looks so much better. And this is what our movement is like. It starts out with small little mistakes and imperfections, but those imperfections are testimony to our desire and our resolve to fight for what is ours. Those imperfections and these streaming difficulties that you have are not indicative of your incompetence. It is indicative of your will to fight for what is rightfully ours. It is indicative of your resolve to say, no, I will not be silent and I will not accept the status quo. So Muhammad, you know what? You can say nothing against us. We are more intelligent and we are more capable. And these little inconsistencies and imperfections will breed the ultimate perfect political vehicle in which we will have a home again. And you will not be in that home and you will not be a part of that. So never ever disparage yourself and take the insults that our enemies direct and throw at us as the biggest compliment that you could ever have, because it means that they fear you. It means that they fear our resolve and our ability. You are not a stupid man, John. You are a brilliant man. And thank you for platforming. It is absolutely necessary.
I tell you, it's a great attitude you have. It's indomitable. You won't be browbeaten. You're not, and boers like you, there's so many boers like you who absolutely are not shy about standing up for themselves. And I don't even think Muhammad is probably really Muhammad at all. He's probably an Oppenheimer pretending to be a Muhammad. Look, I think that coming up to the 2-hour mark here, what I'll just say is that this fight is going to continue. It's a spiritual battle, as anything else. And you have to keep speaking. And your voice is powerful. And I'm so glad that somebody like you has decided to step on the national stage and inspire hope. That each one of us together, united in some way, you never actually part of the, and it is the struggle that makes us stronger and gives meaning and purpose to our lives. That's what our struggle is. In a way, what we can say is that if the God who smiles down on our endeavors, that it's not just that we have faith in him, that he has faith in us. God has faith in us, his people, to fight for our survival, and it.
Amen, John. That is brilliant. I think that also can wrap this up, because I still have meetings and things tonight. I do appreciate you informing us, and I would like to implore the audience. See that there are 200 people watching on YouTube, which is brilliant. Please subscribe to External Extrapolations and follow John in his political journey in becoming, a media representative or whatever it is that he seeks to become for us. But don't just listen to this live stream and pass by and not subscribe. Make sure that you subscribe to his social media and that you support the people that are actively standing up and fighting for you.
Thank you, Johannes. I really appreciate that. It's very kind of you. You have muted yourself just now, but I think you know that. Yeah. What I'm going to say is I think it's great because you've got an eye on the future, and that's what we hear maybe in the background as well. But we'll say no more on that just for now, other than to say you and I will talk in the future, whether it's here, whether it's on X, and best of luck to you in your endeavors as well. I think you're going to be a lot more famous on the world stage. And I look forward one day to saying to people when I'm older, I spoke to that man one time. So really, you knew him? I said, yes, I had a 2-hour conversation, even though it was interrupted. So I'm very grateful for it, Johannes, but I do hope that we speak again in the future and without the technical difficulties.
Thank you very much, John. And I do apologize. I just had my attention distracted. I have a house with a wife and 3 little children, and I'm working on more. White people should have many more children. So I'd also like to encourage other people listening, have children. And even if you think, oh, I can't afford it, no, we will make it work. We have to have more children. We can't think of less. We have to think of more. So again, thank you for your kind words. I was listening, even though I was distracted. I heard everything.
I know, yeah.
And I appreciate it. It is very kind words, and I hope from your mouth to God's ears, it's not that I seek to become a great political figure, but I seek the freedom of my people. That is what I seek, and
Yes.
I will do everything in my power to pursue that and to give my service to. So, thank you very much, John.
That is your
It's been great
principle.
speaking with
Yeah,
you.
that is your principle. That will be, and it's as well. More on the way. That's the attitude. You'll make it work. You will find a way to feed them all, one way or another. That's fantastic. It's the can-do attitude. Well, we'll leave it there, and please God, we'll talk again in the future. And want to say thank you again. Thanks to everybody listening. So I'll leave it at that, and